Some stories don't end when they're over. They linger, creeping into your thoughts when you least expect it. The person who sent me this has tried to move on. They've told themselves it was nothing, just a strange night, just a trick of the mind. And most days that works. But every now and then, something reminds them. A fleeting sound, a shadow in the corner of their vision, a feeling they can't quite shake. Their girlfriend just laughs it off, says they're letting it get to them. Maybe she's right. After all, she wasn't there that night. She didn't see what he saw. So now they're reaching out to see if anyone else has been through something like this, to prove to themselves that it wasn't just their imagination. Or maybe to confirm that something was really there that night. This is what they sent me. Hello everyone. For security reasons, I don't want to disclose much information about myself. I'm posting here because I need some confirmation that I'm not crazy. Or maybe a part of me just needs to get this off my chest. I'm a 25-year-old guy working in logistics for a small firm. I travel a good deal for work. Just part of the job, I suppose. I never minded it much. It's doable while I'm young. No family to raise back home, so I go where the money takes me. I've stayed in more motels than I can count. Some nice, some barely a step above sleeping in my car. Usually, I don't think much about them. A bed, a shower, and a place to crash for the night. That's all I ever really need. I usually prefer out-of-the-way places. Fewer distractions, less small talk. People always assume I must get lonely, but I've learned that solitude can be its own kind of comfort. However, last week, during a routine work trip, I stopped at a small motel just off the highway, a place that, in any other circumstance, I'd forget the moment I checked out. Except now. I can't forget it, no matter how hard I try. I parked my car out front and made my way inside the automatic sliding doors, typical hotel stuff. I had booked ahead of time, so I gave the front desk attendant my name, and she pulled up my information. While she did, she let me know the Wi-Fi password and pointed out where the fitness center was. Room 217, she continued, handing me the key. Should be a quiet stay. Room next to you is empty tonight, so no nosy neighbors. The last couple hours of driving had really drained me, and I'm a light sleeper as it is, so a good night's rest was exactly what I needed. The elevator was right down the hall. 217. I stepped inside, already picturing myself face down in bed, tossing my bag onto the chair in the corner and stretching my arms. The air smelled faintly of stale cigarettes and cheap disinfectant, clinging to the back of my throat like a bitter reminder that this place had seen better days. That's when I noticed a faint hum. At first, I thought it was just the ceiling fan, but the more I listened, the more I realized it was coming from beyond the wall. A low mechanical drone. Steady, rhythmic. I pressed my hand against the thin drywall, and it became obvious. The vending machines. Probably just down the hall, maybe outside one of the stairwells. The occasional faint clunk of something shifting inside. Nothing I couldn't handle. I was practically already falling asleep as is. I brushed my teeth and then laid my head down to rest a couple minutes later. Finally, some peace. I turned over. I'm not easily startled awake, but I couldn't help but hear a metallic scraping sound just beyond the four walls of my room. I checked the clock. 11:30 p.m. A little late for housekeeping. I tried to ignore it. The hotel wasn't exactly 5 stars, but noise persisted. It was light, as if someone was moving furniture. A part of me wanted to laugh it off, like maybe I was just a little too tired. But another part, the one that usually knows better, kept telling me to stay alert. I'm usually not the type to complain to the front desk for noise. but I really needed my sleep. And it was a weekday after all. I dialed the phone. The same front desk attendant answered. I told her about the noises coming from beside me. 217, you said? Let me take a look. I was a little offended that she hadn't remembered me from just a few hours prior, but that was nothing compared to what she said next. Looks like there's nobody staying in 216. Are you sure it was next door? She said with a yawn. I'm sure. It sounds like someone is reorganizing their room over there. I hate to be a bother, but do you mind giving them a call for me? Maybe there was a mix-up in the reservation. She agreed begrudgingly. A moment after she hung up, I heard the phone next door ring. Almost immediately, the sound ceased. They never picked up, but at the very least, they had quieted down. Oh, how I wish it had stayed that way. I relaxed again, believing that would be the end of the racket entirely. It was now 12:30 a.m. I looked over at the clock. What the hell? In the hour that followed the first noise, I had laid with my eyes closed, trying my hardest to ignore the obvious. The sound was getting louder. Even worse, this was no longer a scraping noise. I got up, pinpointed the origin of the sound, and put my ear up to the north wall. Was that a person? Distinct vibrations reverberated from the connecting wall. This was loud enough. I had to take a look myself. I went next door. There it was, 216. I peered into the peephole. Complete darkness. That was odd. This wasn't a passive noise, and it completely stopped once I decided to take a look. At this point, I wasn't necessarily fearful, more so angry. I walked back into my room, determined to get some sleep this time. I was jolted awake again. Any semblance of anger that was upon me immediately washed away. This was no longer scratching. It wasn't knocking. It was tapping. Slow. Deliberate. Like someone wanting to be let in. I sat up, listening, my pulse hammering in my ears. Then, without thinking, I moved toward the door, pressing my ear against the wood. My blood ran cold. It was breathing. Ragged. Uneven. Goosebumps ran up my entire body. Someone was right on the other side, and they sounded desperate. I'd had enough. Screw this. I threw on my clothes, grabbed my key, and ripped down the hallway to the elevator. The moment I reached the front desk, the clerk's face tensed. She recognized me this time. I must have looked like hell. I'm not usually one to make a scene. I keep my head down, avoid drama. But my gut told me I couldn't just brush this off. I leaned on the counter, lowering my voice. Hey, look, I don't mean to be a pain, but I swear, there's someone in the room next to me. She sighed, rubbing her temples, looking even more exhausted than before. What room are you in again? 217, next to 216. She clicked around on the computer, eyes scanning the screen. Yeah, that room's empty. Has been for days. I felt a chill creep up my spine. Are you sure? Because I'm hearing noises. Quite honestly, it's not just the walls creaking. Someone's moving around. She let out a tired breath. Maintenance has been needing to fix some of the AC units on that floor. Could be that damn thing acting up again. I'll have them check on it in the morning. I wanted to believe her. I really did. But deep down, I knew what I had heard. That was no AC unit. Although I didn't want to, I felt the need to stick it out for the night. Just a few more hours. Then, I get back on the road. I returned to the elevator. My mind was overflowing with thoughts and emotions. Something about that room just felt off, ever since the first time I laid eyes on it. I walked past the room. Still no sign of any light from the peephole. I didn't stick around long, however, and entered my room, locking the deadbolt. Then I slid the flimsy security chain into place, the metal clinking softly against the doorframe. Just a few more hours, I kept reminding myself as I turned off the desk lamp next to my bed and closed my eyes. The clock now read 3 a.m. A thin, grating noise slid along the wall. Slow, concise, too controlled to be random. It was sharper this time, like a fingernail scraping just beneath the surface. And now it was moving, no longer static, shifting from one end of the wall to the other. The sound was deafening in the silence. My pulse hammered. My mind raced. I grabbed my phone, fumbling with the password, barely breathing. If I could record it, maybe I could convince myself this was real. I hit record. The second I did, silence. The scraping had vanished. The air in the room felt thicker now, heavier, as if the very walls were waiting for me to react. That wasn't accidental. Someone was listening. Even though the sound was gone, my adrenaline refused to fade. Any chance I had at falling asleep was long gone. My body felt like lead, locked in place as I listened. I waited, heart pounding, straining for any sign of movement. Nothing. Then, at 4 a.m., the silence broke. Shuffling. Right outside my door. Footsteps. Heavy. Unhurried. Not the careless kind of someone passing through, but steady. Purposeful. I forced myself toward the peephole. My breath caught in my throat. Just the dimly lit hallway, still and undisturbed. Exactly how it had looked before. I stepped back, exhaling slowly. Maybe I was overthinking. Maybe it was just a night owl heading outside for a smoke break. Then, not rushed, not polite, not uncertain. Each knock came slowly, spaced apart just enough to stretch the silence between them. Cold dread gripped my chest. I stood motionless, every nerve in my body screaming at me to stay put. There was no way in hell I was opening that door. Silence. I swallowed hard and mustered up any courage I had left to make myself check the peephole again. I scanned the hallway. I looked right, nothing unordinary. Then I looked left. My breath stalled in my lungs. The door to room 216 was slightly ajar. The empty room. The supposedly empty room. It was now clear. I had company. The next few hours were a blur. At this point, exhaustion had truly settled in. If there were any more noises, I didn't hear them. But no matter how drained I felt, there was no chance I was stepping out of my room to investigate that open door. I waited for the first light of morning before packing up my things. Staying any longer than necessary wasn't an option. Down in the lobby, a new clerk stood behind the counter. I tried to explain what had happened. The strange noises, the empty room, the knocks at my door, paired with my lack of sleep, I must have sounded completely unhinged. But I knew what I had heard. I mentioned how 216 was supposed to be empty, yet the door had been open in the middle of the night. The clerk paused, typing my room number into the system. Their eyes flicked to the screen. "Are you sure you were in the right room?" They looked up at me, something uneasy in their expression. Then their face went pale. "That room. There's no guest registered to that room." Their voice dropped slightly. "Are you absolutely sure of what you saw?" I nodded. That was it. I needed answers. If no one was staying there, I wanted to see the room for myself. I'd pay for the damn room if that's what it took. The elevator ride up felt like an eternity. My mind raced through every theory I had pieced together overnight. When I reached the second floor, I turned the corner, my breath catching as I approached 216. The door was closed now. I stepped inside. I was stunned. The bed was still made, untouched. The carpet? Perfectly clean. No scratch marks on the walls. No sign that anyone had been inside last night. The clerk gave me a look, a mixture of I told you so and barely concealed impatience. I didn't argue. What would be the point? I collected my things from the lobby and stepped out into the morning light, the crisp air feeling heavier than it should. I'd had enough of this hotel. As I reached my car, my fingers fumbled and my wallet slipped from my grip, hitting the pavement with a dull slap. I sighed, bending down to pick it up. That's when I made the mistake of looking up. My gaze drifted to the second floor, to 216. And then, the curtains moved. Not a flutter from the air vent. Not the casual sway of cheap motel fabric. They shifted, like someone was standing just behind them, watching. I didn't stay long enough to find out what was on the other side. I got in my car, turned the key, and pulled out onto the road without so much as a glance in the rearview mirror. To this day, I'm still not sure what happened that night. In fact, there's no concrete proof anything happened at all. The two clerks certainly wouldn't agree with my story. But that doesn't change what I heard. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe my mind played tricks on me after a long day on the road. Or maybe, just maybe, it didn't.